Fear. What does it truly mean to overcome fear? How does a person face his or her fears and overcome? What is sleep paralysis, and how do nightmares play a role in overcoming fear? We will also discuss hallucinogenic drugs and what role they play in overcoming fear in this episode. I'm going to discuss a process I call renting the veil. This process involves overcoming fear. Some fear is healthy and needed to prevent harm to self and others. As humans, we tend to let this emotion build and build. It always starts small in thought and is nourished with the unknown. Meaning, what we don't know, we will always fear. Knowing removes the fear. Knowledge of the unknown makes the unknown known and understood. Then, knowing, there is no fear. For example, we do not know where we came from. We landed in these bodies at birth. Therefore, we do not know or understand who we are. So we create for ourselves an ego and say, I am so-and-so. We fill the unknown with anything we claim as known to satisfy the urge to understand and not be afraid, or to let fear rule in ignorance of the truth. The ego is very helpful, as it is used to help identify your children when you go pick them up from school, or where to direct the mail, etc. But that self-identifier we call the ego, that's not who we really are. We know that, and we know it is unknowable. So we use the ego and fear to drive our decisions. In this next part, I will describe a process the ancients used. It is called renting the veil. This process may or may not work for you. In this process, you will be in complete sleep paralysis, and your shadow self may appear in your vision with you. This begins the process. The fear will be pulled out of you, and you will feel like you are dying as fear becomes so intense. This is the first test. If you can surrender completely and say to self, I don't care if I die, I embrace you with love, to shadow self, then you will pass the first test, and what comes next is beyond description. As the feelings and emotions are so very intense, one must truly prepare themselves. This process is not for the weak-hearted or those of little faith. Build your faith first, or you may end up with scratches on your body and all kinds of weird stuff, as the shadow self will lose patience. But trust me, once you let him in, you realize it was you the whole time and you didn't recognize self. The shadow becomes a mirror image of self, and you know him or her as yourself. Then you forgive self for not recognizing self. This is the experience of the Holy Spirit in overcoming all fear. The process is an experience, and I will now try to describe that experience in detail from my personal experience. This is called renting the veil of the Holy of Holies at Temple Mount. The experience in the Bible takes place after the death and during the resurrection period, when the graves were opened and the dead walked. This process was not literal, but rather what we see in this vision. Now, it's important to be sober and clear-minded when doing this process. I must note that any alcohol or drug act as a hindrance and prevent clear visions. Hallucinogenic drugs have a purpose, but finding God in drug use is not the way. DMT is released in a natural process, where hallucinogenic drugs, they don't release in a very structured way, and we need the structure, and it's why we use hallucinogenic drugs as a teaching tool that one can take as an initiate to work through the mind's problems, to release them in that type of therapy. The next steps are taken with a sober mind. This is important to understand, as psychedelic drugs can be used as a tool to release blocks and past emotional distress issues that plague the mind and are being addressed with and dealt with in this self-forgiveness. Once the ego is suppressed in that process, then the psychedelic is no longer needed. Having good control of the ego and self is critical. To be humble and kind in all experiences towards others, it's very important for this process. Breathing. Pranayama is a technique we will use, and in particular, Durga Pranayama. Please research and understand the step-by-step instructions. This is the first breathing lessons taught in pranayama. I recommend laying on your back for the full effect and in order to stretch the spine. Basically, the process is comprised of breathing in very deeply through the nose and then out through the nose. However, you can also exhale through the mouth. Just allow a slow release and a deep release to exhaust all from the lungs. This will help remove the CO2 and oxygenate the blood. When your lungs feel full, try to sip in just a little more air in a quick breath to reach max capacity on inhalation. This helps to expand lung sacs that are not normally expanding, thus allows more oxygen saturation. I definitely recommend a self-study on the 5 types of prana breathing, for prana just means breath or life-giving force. Prana is the universal energy which flows in currents in and around the body. The 5 pranas are prana, apana, udana, yuvana, and samana. There is much more to this study, as pranayama is the 4th limb of the prominent 8-limb path of the yogi. Pranayama is the preparation practice that is required prior to the more advanced techniques of pratyahara, or withdrawal of the senses. Dharana is concentration, and dhyana is meditation, leading to the ultimate state of samadhi, or enlightenment. At this stage, DMT is released at will. In meditation, you can have full control of samadhi or union with the divine. And the release of the DMT, or also known as that milk and honey, that land flowing with milk and honey, that is the spirit world, or a dream meditative state in the upper room of our subconscious. This was a vision I had once before, and it manifested again the same way as the first time. The first time I had the vision, it was accompanied by a bang in my head like a bomb going off. Then I saw my dead body, and it changed to this being of light, and then I saw my body laying dead, and the vortices form on my hands and feet of the dead body, as the head and the side also had vortices formed shortly after that began to spin, and they looked like stars. I felt the euphoria, and the scene changed to the 3 people mourning my death and finding the baby on the floor there. And I'll go into more detail of that later, but the reason I mention this is for the sole reason that the vision came in sequence with the others, and this method allowed me to basically experience it again, and this time with more detail and intensity. It is worth noting also that the only time I experienced these visions are at a time I was of a sober mind and in a meditative state of neither asleep or awake, but a place I call limbo. All right, so I'm going to go over the 3 parts real quick that I think made this all possible. So the first was the breathing technique, the pranayama, in a meditative state laying on the back. I think that's important, and the room was very dark, so there was no distraction to my visual senses. The second one was the intent. I had the intent to meet my higher self. So in my mind, I'm contemplating that and commanding it. Not just contemplating, but I'm making a command come out of my mouth that my higher self must meet me, that I command my higher self to meet me now, not later, but I command my higher self to show himself to me now. And that was the intent. And after the intent, and after the breathing now, I have the intent in my mind. I'm going through the breathing technique, laying on my back. My eyes are rolled back at 45 degrees, so it's just like you're looking upwards as you practice your breathing technique. The eyelids are closed, but your eyes are pointing back so that you can trigger that alpha mind state. And the third part is to wait in that state patiently with a clear mind, not thinking about your intent, not thinking about anything but the breathing, and then the peaceful state of letting your senses relax. In that state of calmness, and your breathing has finished, and you're just laying there like you're preparing to go to sleep, you're in a very relaxed state. This is where you want to wait patiently for that liquid white light to start flickering in your vision. And I notice it usually off in the right or to the left in my peripheral moving into my vision. At the point that you see that white flash or that little flash of light starting to appear, that's when you want to bring your intent back out like a package and place it in that white light with your intent. Just in your mind's eye and focus, you're sliding that package that's already been premeditated of intent that you've focused on before you started. You don't need to go into detail or say it or repeat it again. Just take that intent and place it right in the white light. So once it's placed in the white light, then you just relax and wait. You wait patiently, watching the white light dance around in your vision with your third eye. That is what I usually see right before my third eye opens, is the white light. It's called the golden liquid light. It's very difficult to describe. Once you experience it and see it in your vision, you'll know what I'm trying to describe. And with this process, you should get to that step. All right. Now I'm going to set down my notes and just go into my memory of the event called Renting the Veil. Okay, so as I laid there in bed, I'd finished the breathing, and I waited for the white light to come in. After the white light had danced around my vision a little bit, my third eye opened, and I was standing in a house. The house I have never been in before. Very unfamiliar, and I'm standing in the living room. I remember the yellow-colored walls and the beige carpet and the furniture that was there. Looked very modern. And I felt very alone in the house, like there was nobody else in the house. And as I'm kind of looking around the house trying to figure out where I'm at, I'm feeling suddenly a very uneasy feeling coming over me, like I shouldn't be here. Like, this isn't my house. I don't belong here. Why am I here? And that's when I kind of felt that I wasn't alone anymore. Maybe there is something here with me, and it's not showing itself to me. And it might attack me. I'm feeling fearful for some reason. And then all of a sudden the lights go out, and it's just pitch black and dark. Now, when I first had this vision, this was accompanied in this darkness by a feeling of being trapped. And I really felt that come through again, like I was trapped. And as I'm in the darkness of being in that feeling of trapped, something grabs the back of my neck, just like claws digging in. And it was just pure dread and terror at that point. My fear accelerates up to a high level. And I'm recalling this feeling as I'm having this as something I've experienced before. And the process is very intense. I'm feeling like I'm going to die. Like there's a heart beating in my chest. It's just ready to just explode. And I'm like in panic mode because I'm so much fear overwhelming me at this point, and I'm in the darkness that I snap out of it. And I realize that I'm laying in bed. I had completely forgotten that I went into a meditative state and that I was doing what I was doing. I was like, wait, I'm just meditating. Let me go back into breathing. So I started the breathing thing again, saying, I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm just in a meditative state. Let the fear grow. I need to let it grow more. So I'm telling myself that, and I go back into the breathing technique, and as I re-enter that calm state where I'm very relaxed again, and I see the white light dancing, and then boom, I'm right back to where I was at. The claws are in the back of my neck. My third eye's open again. It's like, I didn't even wake up, but I realized I did. So I'm consciously aware that I'm awake this time. And the claws are just sinking in painfully in the back of my neck. My heart's increasing. I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm like, okay. fine. If I'm going to die, I will die. No big deal. This can't kill me. I'm just in a meditative state. Let it be fully embraced. I'm going to just embrace it with love. So in my thought, I'm thinking, I'm going to embrace this creature with love that's got me by the back of the neck. And I said, I fully surrender to you. I fully surrendered all. I said, I give you love, and, I surrender to the fear. And when I had that full feeling like I couldn't take any more fear, and my heart was just rapturing out of my chest with a heart attack, I just feel complete bliss and euphoria as I let go. In that submission, that feeling of letting go, that hand that pulled me out of my body, that claw that was grabbing me by the back of the neck, it pulled me out of my body. And now I'm looking down at my body, and I'm confused, because I'm seeing my body there, and it looks not animated. It looks dead. And I turned to look at what this was that pulled me out of my body, and I can't see anything. I can't feel the hand in my neck. And I look back at the body that's on the floor, and although it's dark all around us, I can see the body. I can see myself. I can see my features. But slowly, there's a cloud of darkness that's overtaking my body. And as that cloud is overtaking my body, the body itself, I can't see the features on the body anymore. It just looks like a dark, shadowy human form laying there. And I'm still feeling all the sensations of euphoria and bliss, but I'm very confused. I feel like I'm outside of my body, looking at my body, and I'm seeing my body start to stand up, and there's this crack in the shoulder, and there's light pouring out of that crack, and I'm just staring at it in fascination that this was just me laying there, and now it's a dark shadow being, and now that dark shadow's cracking, there's light coming out of it, and as this being fully stood erected, I could see the cracking going throughout all the body, and the shadow just falling away. And I'm just now staring at a being, a human-shaped figure that is glowing with this liquid golden light that is so dreadful to behold. The sounds of it arcing and popping are like transformers blowing up and snapping, and there's just a very dreadful vibration of high intensity that is just shaking me to my core. And all that fear and everything was there mixed with the comfort, emotion of the euphoria, and it was very difficult to explain the overlapping feelings that were all taking place at once as I was beholding this. And in this moment of self-realization, I was thinking to myself, this is me. This is who I really am. This is who I really am. This being of light that is inside of me. This energy that's so intense. And that vision was very intense. And I'm reminded that I've had this vision before. Because when I seen this and this feeling that I was having, I was also remembering the dream, the vision that I had had just a few years prior to this, when I was at a moment before I received cancer treatment, before I received any surgery and my full diagnosis. There was a period of time that I quit smoking cigarettes and cannabis and became very sober-minded, no alcohol use or anything. And I was very concerned about my health and being very ill, being in a very ill state. And I'd already been rushed to the emergency room, and there was speculation that I needed more diagnosis. I may have cancer. So I was in a panic state, and I didn't want to get treatment. And I tried to do holistic stuff to heal myself, and it wasn't working. But I tried to get real healthy. And during this period of time is the period that I had several sets of visions that took place. I call them the Neville prophecies. This unfolding took place. And I don't think I would have survived if I didn't get the treatment. But what was happening was so intense at that time that this same vision was part of the revealing at the beginning. And it was also accompanied by a boom in my head. So I had that really loud explosion when I was in the darkness. And then this renting of the veil, where I feel like the body, I see the body there, but the body's in another vision. It's in the second vision that I see the body again. The first one, when I came out of the skull, was what I call the renting of the veil. And that's when my connection with God was opened, and it really has never been able to be closed since. And I think, that's really the real definition of renting the veil, is when the Holy of Holies is revealed. There's nothing that can close that back up. It has been exposed, and once it's exposed, that connection's solid. So you can see what's there, and you can communicate, with your higher self in that method. So when I had this vision the first time when I was really ill, and what I realized I just did was recall the vision that was very familiar, I also remembered very clearly the vision that went right after this. So the very next time I went into meditation, this same effect happened once again, where I was seeing the completion of this vision, I would say, because I saw again my body laying there like I did in the first vision. And it was kind of like a continuation, but this time the body was laying there in bed, and I was outside of my body. So I'm trying to recall if the vision was the same, if it shifted, or if there was a break in the vision. But I do recall the second part of it where I am laying in the bed. And then there's what we call the three wise men, which is basically two of my siblings and my wife at that time, who were mourning my dead body laying in the bed as if I died from cancer. So at that time I had thought to myself, well, I'm going to die of cancer, so I go prepare my will and make my final testament and stuff. I actually think that I'm going to die, so I'm at that state. And it's based on these visions that I'm getting that I don't really understand in detail at that time, but are scaring me enough to get me to the point where maybe I should try something. And I do end up going in for surgery and treating the stage 4 cancer at that point with chemotherapy, which is probably, with that and changing what I'm going to talk about in the next video, basically, was what I believe caused my cancer and what I had to change in order for my body to really heal. So yeah, the chemo, that worked, that helped. The cannabis helped. There's a lot of things that helped. I can't really pinpoint any one of those things and say it was this or that. But I do know my change in my mind state has prevented cancer from coming back or from regrowing. And I'm going to describe that change that took place and what transpired from that in a later video that I can go into more detail. So for this video, this is renting the veil. This process, using the breathing and setting the intent, I believe, can help you communicate with the divine, so to speak. This method of breathing is described as a method to set up that communication, that initial communication with the divine through this breathing. And it works. I found it very helpful and successful to try and use these different breathing techniques. So there's like 5 different breathing techniques here you can try. This is just the first one, and it's very basic and simple and works. It works to help relieve stress and anxiety. You can do it any time of the day. You can practice this breathing technique. And it really helps. It helps reduce stress, and it's shown to improve your blood circulation and oxygenate the blood, all great things. So go ahead and give it a try. Take a look at the research too. Make sure you understand the common mistakes in breathing, trying these different processes, as well as the different points that you want to make sure you're following through the steps so that you have the right orientation. You don't want to injure yourself or feel like you're over inhaling or exhaling. Those are common mistakes. You don't want to take it to that extreme. So it's important to read up on this a little bit and really understand it. I didn't go into a lot of detail on it because I figured that was something you could go out and research, dive into if you're interested in learning this process. So I believe this process has helped me to overcome a lot of fear, like fear in death and dying, fear in loss and losing different loved ones. It reassures me and gives me hope and understanding that there's more to life than just this one life. And fear really is a result of not knowing. And once we know, once we feel reassured, a lot of that fear goes away. And fear can be a driver to cause people to do a lot of irrational things. So, something that we need to definitely get a hold of. And when we are in a state of limbo, when you're sleeping in a dream state and you have that sleep paralysis and you see a dark shadow entity or something taunting you, or you feel your fear increasing, I'd say it's important to stand up to that, to really let it run its course into completion. And I think this will help you to overcome a lot of fear. And that's what we see in psychedelics, like mushrooms. This is great for people that are close to death and have the fear of dying. Just having the feelings of reassuring that there's more to this existence than what we're sensing in our normal sober state. That's what the psychedelics really do. It opens up your perception to other people's minds and feelings and emotions. And it really forms a sense of unity amongst the minds as you play in that sandbox. Psychedelics can be helpful, but I think too much emphasis is put on psychedelics as being some kind of end-all, save-all, and that's just not the case. Our bodies are designed to release psychedelic substances, like, the DMT. Fine example, it's what's painting that picture in our third eye. And when we hallucinate, that's really what we're seeing in the use of psychedelic substances. A lot of movies in Hollywood portray it as something other than that, but really the hallucination is the dream state. And some individuals will walk around without sleep for 36, 40 hours. They start to actually dream and can't tell that they're dreaming while they're still awake. And that's it. Just another form of the hallucination. Again, it's the dream mind state that's bleeding through into their reality. And sleep deprivation is a great way to experience the psychedelic effect, because it's very similar to what you experience on these psychedelics. A blending of the reality of your, real world with that dream state. And that can be intense, especially when you're up walking around and trying to function. You tend to act like a zombie. So, on the discussion of hallucinogenic drugs and different properties, they do play a role, and were used by early initiates, especially in the Christian faith, as well as several of these other faiths and religions, have used this substance for their initiates to experience those feelings. And there's some benefits, but like I said, they have their place. And everything has its place. It acts as a tool to help us to grow and to understand who we are. And we get to the point where we don't need these substances in meditation. Our mind can fully capable of giving us that euphoric feeling of samadhi without any interference from these substances, because they tend to provide blocks. They tend to be unauthenticated experiences that are just placed on the drug use itself rather than an authentic vision or experience from a sober state of mind. So the sober state of mind is key in being, humble in your daily activities, eating properly, proper foods and diets. This is critical. But also controlling our attitude and the do's and don'ts of the attitude problems that we face. I'd like to go into more detail, like I said, in the next video. And I'm going to point out some things that I noticed that I did prior to the cancer growth that may have caused and influenced that growth. I just want others to be aware of that possibility in them and how important getting control of the mind really is. So that's all I have for this video, Renting the Veil. Give it a try. Let me know what you think. If anybody has success with this, or if anybody else has experienced any of these prophecies like Neville's described, I would love to hear from you, because I talk to people all the time about this stuff, and the only people that I can really relate to are people that have already passed away, like Neville Goddard. Very few people have had these spiritual experiences and have experienced scripture in life and can relate it like I have so vividly. But I would love to hear from anybody else that has experienced any of this. Thank you.